Alright, so in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to take a cutout asset and just create a watercolor asset from it instead. So I opened up one of the resources from our graphic assets folder. This is just a tree cutout. I'm going to drag it off into its own window and then just bring it into the Photoshop document here. So I'm going to place it on the page, just pretty much anywhere that it looks interesting. And in order to create a texture, all you need to do is control click on this cutout layer, and you can see that Photoshop selects everything within that layer automatically, so you don't have to worry about trying to make a selection of this complex object. Then I'll go into my background layer and just hit Control J. That's going to create a duplicate object. If we turn off the other layers, we can see that we're left with this watercolor cutout of a tree, and it's already perfectly shaped to the exact dimensions and cutout of the tree object that we used as a template. So if you want to create a whole bunch of interesting and different textures, you could just move this tree around on the page, select it, duplicate it from the background, and you would have a veritable army of different tree textures that you could potentially use. If you want to alter the color of these textured objects, like say you don't want your tree to be gray and blue, you maybe want it to be toned more green, there are some easy ways you can change the color. I'll start with the non-descriptive ways. One option, and possibly the easiest, is just double click on the layer. This will bring up the layer styles panel here, and you can do a whole bunch of different things to this object within the layer styles panel, but we're going to focus on color overlay. If we go to color overlay and then we just make sure that this is on normal and select any color, you can see that it begins to color over the entire cutout. So if I want to choose a more muted green color, maybe something like that, I can press OK. You can change the opacity to see how much of the texture you see through. And then just like in the layers palette in Photoshop, you can also change the blend mode. So you can take a look at what impact those have. They're all going to have different effects on the layer itself. So you can experiment and see which of these you feel like works for you. But I'm going to keep with normal and then just turn down the color to around 50%. So that's one way you can change the color of a texture, and it's non-destructive, so you can turn this on and off and you'll always have access to the original file. You can also copy this layer style and paste it onto another layer. So if I wanted all my trees to have the same layer style, I could right click here and go copy layer style, and then right click on this layer and go paste, and you see it applies the exact same effect to this other layer too. I'm just going to Control Z. Another way you could change the color would be to add a filter. Down on the bottom bar here, there's this little circle. This is all your filters. And if you add a hue saturation filter, you can go in and check off this Colorize palette here. Now you're noticing that this filter is applying to all of the layers that are below it. So it's not just applying to the layer right here, it's applying to every layer below it. I'll show you how to change that later. But if you want to use a color slider and the saturation slider, you can decide on another color for your tree. You can also change the lightness and darkness of that color. So I'm going to go down here, like that. To apply this filter to just one layer, all you need to do is press down Alt and hover over the middle between the layers, right at this line between the saturation filter and the layer itself. Press down Alt, just hover over top of it, and you'll see this little arrow come up. If you click it, that will apply this filter only to this layer. So that gives you much greater control over how you use filters. I'm going to just duplicate this by pressing Control J and bring it over top here. And I'm going to get rid of the layer style by going Clear Layer Style. I just want to show you one more way that you could change the color of something in Photoshop. This is a destructive way to change it, so I would always be sure that you're absolutely certain you want to permanently change the color of the object you're working on. So this is Shift Control U. This is going to turn this into a black and white object. Alternatively, related to that command is Control Alt U. Control Alt U will bring up a similar color slider to what we just saw in that filter. I can click off Colorize, and again I have control over these sliders, so I can make another tree color here. The difference is that when I apply this, it permanently changes the color of this layer. So I can't use this and get back to the original texture that I have, whereas in these ones, I can just turn off the filter and it goes back the way it was, or I could turn off the layer style and it goes back the way it was. So I hope you can see that working non-destructively is always the more flexible option in case you want to change these assets in the future.